Hello, I'm Zena Zenonos-Walker. I am an Associate Assistant Vice Principal. I've been in education for the last 15 years, 8 of which as a senior leader. Specialism, of course, is drama. My Twitter handle is @ZenonosZena, and you're more than welcome to email me at zenonoswalker@gmail.com. I'm going to share my screen so we can make a start. So today, really, I've just got some top tips around the importance of relationships in your teaching and moving forward in your career. So some questions I think are really important for you to consider and also revisit throughout your career is what is your why? Why are you here? Why did you decide to be a teacher? Why did you decide to work at that particular school? And what's really important for me is for you to think about what you want to be remembered for. What will your legacy be when you are long gone from education? How is it you want your students to remember you? And are you likable? And if you're not, why not? What are you a teacher of? And self-reflection. You don't get much time when you become a teacher and you have lots to do. You've got marking and planning, and your CPD is really jam-packed with lots of different things to learn and try out. We don't really get given the time for self-reflection, but I would really urge you to find that time because that would be really important. So how do you or will you set the tone in your classroom? And this really comes down to the culture and the behaviour and the values that you hold for your classroom and how these directly impact on the students that you teach. These all come from you. So what are your values and how are you going to role model these consistently every lesson, every single day? And what are you a teacher of? It's not just that specialism of drama that you teach or English or whatever it is you decide you are teaching at that time, but what else are you a teacher of? Rita Pearson, wonderful woman and educator in America, she says people have said to her, my job is to teach and their job is to learn, end of story. And she quite rightly says, well, you have an arduous year ahead of you, I'm afraid, my dear, because teaching is so much more than just teaching, and that's it. So what makes a good teacher? And in order to think about that, I'd urge you to think about your own experience at school. Did the teachers that had a positive impact on you? Why was this? What is it they did to make you feel that what they did was right by you as a student at the time? And we so often get stuck in this loop of we're there to teach the content, students should learn the content, they then make progress from the content they've learned, and then they gain their credentials to be successful. But what if a student struggles to learn the content? And this is really important because you will have young people in your classroom that will just not get it. And not just not get content, but they will misbehave because of it, because they struggle in school. So the things I would really wish I knew prior to my NQT year is the fact that building strong, unconditional, meaningful relationships with your students and the students within your school is the single most important aspect of your teaching career. We're not just teachers. We are mentors, we're role models, we're life coaches. We give students emotional support. We're caregivers. We are that link between things that we struggle with, well, young people struggle with, should I say, and being able to show them on the right path. So we're not simply just under that label of a teacher. But relationships can be made regardless of the policies in place at your school, and it's down to you as the adult who is going to decide and dictate how that is going to be done. One thing, and again, Stephen Cowey says, seek to understand before you seek to be understood. If we can start to understand the reasons why a young person might behave in the way they do, then we can start to think beyond their behaviour and think about constantly sanctioning and thinking about how I'm going to build that relationship with that young person, knowing that they're currently struggling or their behaviour is telling you something else. So some top tips for me are to think about how you meet and greet your students at the door. So are you somebody who smiles, greets them and says hello, or are you somebody who just stands there quietly pointing into the classroom? It's really important that you don't name and shame behaviours on the board and advertise the behaviours that you want to see rather than the behaviours that you don't want to see. So if someone's doing something that you've asked them to do straight away, that's what you want to write on the board, not the student who's reluctant to get started. So know your routines and be consistent every lesson, every single day. Those routines need to be in place at the start of your teaching day, or start of your teaching career, I should say. And they might be routines that is whole school routines that is expected of you, but get to know those routines and make sure that they are consistently used. Respond to the behaviours of students calmly. As soon as you lose your temper or you shout, you've lost the battle, and sometimes that's the kind of thing that young people want. They want to see you lose your temper, lose control, and feel like, you know, they've possibly got one up on you. Always praise in public and have the quiet word with that student who's attention needing in private. And make sure, again, having clear boundaries and high expectations. I think a lot of people misunderstand relationship building as having low expectations, but I would argue that it's absolutely not the case. Having high expectations of your young people in your classroom and keeping them high is what's important, so that they know exactly what's expected of them all of the time. And don't take things personally. Behaviours are not because of something that you have personally done, and maybe it is, I don't know, but don't take the way that young people are behaving personally towards you. And what's really important is that we change the language around young people and their families and the communities. So instead of saying that someone has got challenging behaviour, sorry, 1 second, just going to close this window. Saying they've got challenging behaviour, let's change it and call it distress behaviour. Instead of saying that a child is attention seeking, we'll call it attention needing. A difficult child is a child with difficulties, and a troubled family is a family with troubles. Now, I've put @Mark Finnis at the bottom there. He's definitely worth a follow on Twitter, and he you know, has some systems in place for, you know, building stable relationships with young people. And Mark has, in recent conversations I've seen him have on Twitter, he talks about 4 ways of being. So how are you going to ensure that your teaching practice does things with children rather than to children? So for somebody who has really high challenge but low support, you're in that 2 box. So that's a kind of what we call a punitive approach, and you're doing things to young people rather than with them. Again, if you're somebody who has low challenge and really high support, that's a kind of rescue mode. You're doing things for them, you're making excuses for them, and you're trying to rescue them. But equally, that's equally as damaging as doing things to them. And obviously, you know, if you don't do either challenge or support, that, you know, that's neglectful practice, and that's something that definitely needs to be challenged by senior leaders. But ideally, you want to be in that with box. So you have high challenge and high support. And behind challenge, you have expectations, you're setting limits. But that's mirrored with, you know, really high levels of compassion and empathy and listening. So instead of having just a punitive approach to your teaching and the way that you deal with behaviour, you're doing things with children, which is more relational, but it's no less of the authority. In fact, it's just a different way of doing things with children rather than to them. So I know it was a whistle-stop tour. There's some suggested reading here that I think would really support you in dealing with challenging behaviour in your classrooms. If, again, you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Thanks.